Hi, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this session on creating resilient supply chains of the future. My name is Balu Chaturvedula, and I'm Vice President of Engineering at Walmart Global Tech India. Our objective today is to share insights and perspectives on the future of supply chain, including the role of technology and innovation in removing vulnerabilities and promoting resilience within the supply chain. Over the past year and a half, we've all seen how global manufacturers have had their supply chains adjusted to the rapidly changing customer needs. Various factors have contributed to this, including the pandemic, interrupted production, labor issues, trade wars, etc. However, supply chains can become resilient by leveraging people, processes, and technology to smooth our challenges and design better digital operation strategies. I'm joined today by David Guggina and Samay Kohli. David Guggina has over 15 years of experience and expertise in the field of product and service operations, automation, and supply chain engineering. He's been with Walmart for over 3 years. Prior to joining Walmart, David worked at Amazon as a general manager, virtual customer service operations. David has a degree in business from Purdue University. Samay Kohli has over 10 years of experience in the field of automation and logistics. He founded GreyOrange in the year of 2012 and has been CEO for the last 9 years. Prior to founding GreyOrange, Samay has worked at Robotics, CNC Technologies, and Kajun Lab. Samay has obtained both his bachelor's and master's degree from Birla Institute of Technology and Sciences. Before we begin, I would also like to announce something special for our audience. Please do tweet your key takeaways from the session with the hashtag Converge at Walmart. There are exciting prizes for few lucky tweets. So we'll start with David. David, Walmart recently announced that it is spending $14 billion on capital expenditures in the fiscal year 2022 to focus on supply chain, automation, customer-facing initiatives, and technology. What are the key foundations for building a resilient supply chain? And what are the main learnings businesses have come away with after the pandemic?
Well, first off, thanks for having us today, Balu. I'm happy to be here with the Converge audience. So, I'll touch on what we've learned from the pandemic, just a couple items. The first is that customer needs and behaviors can change overnight. In addition to strong demand for shopping within our stores, we saw pickup and delivery to home demand accelerate by 2 to 3 years in some cases. And as you can imagine, this put a lot of pressure on our supply chain as well as our partners' supply chains that we depend on to service customers. And it was a good reminder for us on how agile we need to be as a supply chain. I think the pandemic also taught us to have a plan A, but in addition to that, we need to have a plan B and a plan C. Within the automation space, which is where my organization plays primarily, we saw and continue to see challenges with supplier components across a broad spectrum, and have had to adapt quickly with respect to our strategies to ensure that we can service customers. Because of our relentless focus on planning and having robust plans, that's allowed us to deliver meaningful outcomes for customers on time despite these challenges. Now, with respect to how we create a more resilient supply chain, I would say there are really 4 key foundations. And those are creating an agile, integrative, productive, and customer-centric supply chain. With regards to agility, I would reference investing in one's ability to accurately predict demand. That means knowing when, where, and how customers are going to want to be serviced. And as I just noted, customer habits can change rather quickly. And if a retailer doesn't have the agility to service a customer in their preferred manner, that customer will go somewhere else. So building out our system capabilities that help us predict customer demand, set us up as a supply chain to service customers the way they choose to be served in the moment, which is important to drive resilience. The second piece I mentioned was an integrated supply chain network. Our supply chain and many others are moving towards fewer and fewer one-to-one relationships with respect to their assets. And we're creating more one-to-many relationships. The example I would use is in the market fulfillment center space. That's where we're putting automated fulfillment structures and retrofitting them and putting them in the backs of stores. The automated systems combined with our personal shoppers help us improve availability, service level, and efficiency for pickup and delivery to home. With an MFC, the front of the store continues to operate and serve in-store shoppers, while the back of the store can serve as a fulfillment hub, a sortation center, or a delivery hub for the growing demand that we're seeing in pickup and delivery. And that creates a more integrated supply chain and a more integrated asset that is more useful to the network. The next call out I had was productivity. For supply chains today, that means often investing in automation and a more automated network. And that's both software and hardware, which leads to lower costs, increased productivity, increased throughput capabilities, stickier jobs, which drives folks towards longer years of service, and therefore you have more experienced associates servicing customers and working within our assets. I think a great example of what Walmart is doing in this space is our investment in with Symbotic and the Symbotic system, which works to efficiently ingest, store, retrieve, and build store-ready pallets and mixed cases. Now, the Symbotic system has increased the accuracy of freight being stored for future orders. The dense modular storage has expanded our buildings, our DC capacity. And by using attribute collection technology coupled with automated storage and retrieval systems and high-speed palletizing robotics to organize and optimize freight, we can create custom store and aisle-ready pallets and case packs, which transforms the unload experience and the stocking experience, and again, helps make our supply chain more resilient. And the last thing I mentioned was customer centricity. Supply chains are the keystone for customer experience in today's retail environment. This could refer to a delivery to a customer's home, or it could refer to the need for supply chains to think about how they play a large role in working towards a more regenerative organization that improves a customer's community. Everything we build within Walmart and what we should be working towards in building out in supply chains globally should start with outcomes that matter to the communities and the customers we service and work backwards from there. That Balu, is how we're thinking about resiliency today.
That's well said, David. I think, as you rightly said, and it all starts with the customer, what he wants, when he wants and how he wants. I think a lot of the network needs to be relooked at from that point of view. Well said. Samay, moving on to you. GreyOrange integrates software and robots built together specifically to improve order fulfillment, throughput, scale, accuracy, and economics. The COVID-19 crisis has highlighted the importance of high level of transparency and visibility of end-to-end supply chain performance. Can you comment on achieving this visibility?
Sure, Balu. But thank you so much for having me here. I think as I think about it, but let me set at the outset. Firstly, I think just visibility is gone from. I think as David would agree, before COVID, right? We'll be like, this is essential. I don't think like COVID made visibility essential. I think even before COVID, it's pretty essential. And we were. It's trying to become very, very important, right? I think what COVID just did was kind of made it critical, right? Like it made it do or die, I think, in terms of visibility. So I would just firstly set off with that I think in today's, world that's there, just adding on to what David said, I'm sure he'll agree. It's actually plan A, B, C, and D, and E, and literally every day is a different plan, right? So when you look at it, right? And and no plan, if you really look at it, neither can it be planned or executed without visibility, right? I mean, if you don't know at that granular level, right? And let's also acknowledge that this was not needed. I would say even a couple of years back, right? You could kind of get away with about 70-80% of your network operating on a said mode, right? You've kind of set these up, you've set SOPs up, and in most cases, most of your supply chain for for a long time would too, right? That's pretty much out the window. I think we all believe, in the industry that that is not happening. It doesn't mean that it needs to be, let's just say, I mean, none of us want another pandemic, even though we're going through the variants, but that might be extreme. But what has really changed is it's kind of reset the retail market's consumer perspective, right? Like, I mean, if you really think about it, before we were all like, okay, curbside will come, right? Pickup will come, these will grow up, let's see how they trend up there, this, right? Like, now this is all mixed in, right? Like, now we're in that world 4 or 5 years forward, right? Where this is all, we don't know where things will settle, at least for the next 4 or 5 years, right? And that's why I think visibility is critical, right? I think the other thing, and I would link also visibility to this ability to say that uh, I- Balu, if you look at visibility for us, especially, I have a little GreyOrange bias here. We really look at it as to how much of visibility and transaction is linear versus circular in nature,
Hmm.
right? Because like, it's also visibility. It's a broad word, right? Visibility, now we're not at the point at both from a partner to retail company like yours or others, right? Also, as our own running from a point of view, it's not just data up, right? It's actually about like data and the ability to action on some data, right, at that instant, right? Almost, right? Because and now this reaction can be, as you said, can be a person, can be process, can be machine learning, right? Whatever it is, but it's this circular loop, right, which is really needed, right? Because it's not about pulling up the reports real time or that, which is what unfortunately people confuse visibility with, right? Visibility is this whole circular loop of how is it actionable and what that is. So I would just say, firstly, I mean, it's as important as it can get, is probably firstly what I think I'm answering in, right? And just, I think, going and echoing on what David said, right? Like, what we saw, by the way, on predictability, for example, for a retailer we work with, right? And this is a brand and retailer combined, right? Like, just in between of going, COVID hits, they go get online, right? And you've not had this behavior, right, before, right? So they're actually executing what you're saying about, there's visibility, there's like, okay, this is going in, but this is this cyclic move between different channels that you need to be able to do, right? So I would just add somewhere in the loop that it's, in my opinion, its visibility is also a lot related to everything being integrated,
Hmm.
right? And I think this is something we all as an industry have to kind of move up to say that we can't stay, right? This is not about like one thing, right? But it's just about making sure everything is integrated within, because that visibility also having, we're not going to get much value if we have the automation giving me one report, our
Absolutely.
inventory giving us another report, and this needs to be actionable and connectable. So just echoing Balu on what you said.
Fantastic. I think, yeah, I think, yeah, well said. I think the need for, like, tighter loop closing and in terms of like overall network visibility, I think it's a phenomenal point, right? On that note, Samay, will have the next question to you. I think in recent decades, value chains have grown in length and complexity as companies expanded around the world in pursuit of like margin improvements. Like since 2000, the value of intermediate goods traded globally has tripled to more than like 10 trillion annually. Businesses that successfully implemented a lean and a global model of like manufacturing achieved improvements in indicators such as inventory levels, on time in full deliveries, and shorter lead times. So how can the supply chains can be more resilient in the post-COVID world, given there has already been a significant investment that has happened in the last 18 months?
Um, but let me say one thing which will be slightly contradiction to
Sure.
what you said. Just to get the discussion going. But let me start. I really think, firstly, Babu, we've kind of looked at supply chains as very cost functions, right? And that's why we kind of jump from cost functions to margin improvement, right? I from the bottom of my heart really believe, and I think a lot of you know people also in the space, is that we need to move that, right, to actually, revenue uplift and customer service, right? Because margin also improves that way, right? So if you, look at that, right, that's something, if you, really look at it, right? And I'm not going to quote Sam Walton here, but this is one book I really like. So just, I happen to be on a, a Walmart conference, that's why, but not related to, that. But, if you really look at it, that theme, from the early days of, how do you bundle more goods, right? Move more volume, also moves more margin up, right? Is kind of coming very true, right? And that's why, firstly, I'll just say that, while, margin improvement and, cost reduction is kind of hygiene, right? It's needed, right? We are really in a world where brands are actually acquiring this whole, shift from, I won't call it from retail to e-com, I'll call it retail to omni-channel, right? This whole shift is also moving customers between brands, right? And that's why supply chains, globally have a really good opportunity, right, to actually be that difference in, moving customers over, right? Which is, I'm sure David's done the maths, and, I have also, which is the ROIs and the savings, when you start looking at revenue uplift, are a very key part, right? So I think we should also, right, for all the listeners, just bring this open that, supply chains are no longer in this whole world of like, kind of race to zero. How do we make sure that the margins get in? Supply chains now have a very strategic role to play, right? And, and that's kind of coming true in this, right? Because, there are a lot of times, right, where, our customers, partners, right, including Walmart, right, would take calls saying, I'm going to lose another dollar of shipping costs more, or I'm going to ship this faster, right? Because on the net, the customer experience and retention metrics will increase, right? So I would just firstly just, bring it in that, to be resilient also means that this integration has to move little wider, right? We have to take decisions on, I know Walmart already does this, but, overall, which is decisions on NPS, decisions on time, right? Which, if you really look at it, you know, I'm relatively new to supply chain. I'm only been here, 10 years, but, like if you look at it, I don't think this was a very top of mind for people, right? It was a very cost and delivery service mode. And we just need to bring in that visibility, that integration all the way up, right? To say all these factors, because these are not, different, right? Like at a fulfillment center, or when you order allocate, you take these decisions which can have a huge impact on customers, right? And frankly, can also have huge impacts on margins on the other end, right? You ship the same item from two different distribution centers versus one, right? That's the difference between do you make money on that transaction or you don't, right? For a lot of this thing. And I know I'm kind of adding to the complexity point, Balu, that you were saying, right? It's already complex enough. It's already got medians in. But I do think it's this holistic thing. We need to kind of make it, if I may, more complex to make it simpler, right? Because we have to make the decisions based on, what are those key business KPIs, right? I would start off with that.
Yeah, fantastic. I think the key, I think you reiterated is, cost-effective supply chains to, profitable supply chains, right? I think, and that's the broader picture. And I totally agree with you on that point of view. And David, I'm sure you have very interesting thoughts to share on this.
I think about a great Albert Einstein quote, listening to you speak, Samay, as, the world as we have created it is a process of our thinking, and it cannot be changed without changing our thinking. And I really do think we need to change the way we think about supply chains. Customers are wanting to be serviced in a multitude of different ways in the moment, and that means often shorter lead times with respect to the time we have to respond to those needs. And then in many cases today, it means that the face of the organization is supply chain. And when the face of the organization is your supply chain, that experience of having groceries delivered to your doorstep or into your refrigerator, you may not interact with an individual, but you've interacted with the supply chain. So I have to plus one to the comments you just made of how we need to start thinking about supply chains differently and how they add value to organizations. and where we make investments as an organization to change the customer experience. So,
thank you, David. So moving on to the next point, the past several decades has seen supply chains become increasingly more sophisticated and complex to both. Global sourcing with all of its complexities is the key for any enterprise to compete globally. How important is in supply chain collaboration and how technologies like blockchain can help in this journey? David, can we start with your point of view on this?
absolutely. So, Balu, I would say collaboration is key. And it's key between a whole suite of people. And that's retailers like Walmart and others. That's regulators. That could be ocean, air, rail, domestic couriers. You've got the suppliers themselves from the farmers that are creating the produce. And you have marketplace sellers. And all of these partners need to collaborate together so that we can build the global trade platform of the future. And I do think blockchain will play a big role in the future. You think about the improvements around security and encryption. So just imagine how much simpler transferring funds for goods can be as we move forward. It brings blockchain can bring more transparency across the process between all of those partners that I mentioned. Therefore, it can improve collaboration and help us decentralize the data so that we can work better together. I do think we still have a lot to prove. You and I both know that this is a space we're investing in as an organization. But there are definitely challenges to scale this globally and build that global trade platform that we will have to surmount.
Absolutely, I agree. Samay?
But firstly, I'll just echo, I think, what David's, said also, things that I think Walmart's also published about, the kind of the experiments, tests, right, pilots that you guys have done, right? I know we've worked with a couple of other people around that thing. I would just echo, by the way, that I think it's to the point, though, there's a lot of work to be done, right? I think that's the this thing. I think the value of it running seamlessly is kind of key. I'll take 1 minute to kind of take this a little bit to something related to this which is just traceability. But if you look at it, right, like I have a quick story on when we started in, right, like most of our algorithms, right, in on our software called Gray Matter, right, were built around master data, right? And and as I said, we're kind of new into the industry. We're like, okay, master data should be standard, right? But when you really look at it, right, and and David's smiling because he must have gone through this journey at some time, right? But I really think that that our I think it's similar to how supply chain was built, right? A lot of supply chain software for all of us, right, at moments and times, right, kind of loses data, right? So I think I think blockchain, when you look at it fully integrated in, right, is on a path, and I do think it's kind of it has a very relevant use and play, right? Especially in consumer goods and goods which really need that traceability back. I would even just bring it back to saying that I think just this integrated view on a I call it item based view, serialized based view, not losing data between is something we all kind of have to also invest in, right? I think that bit, right, in this, because I think our ability to do that digital transformation, right, is also linked to, right, like, are we just losing data at transactions? I didn't really touch the blockchain side, I think, which you did, but I couldn't add anything to David's point. But I would just think we've got a lot of work right now in just data, doing at master data level, at when data gets come in, right? For example, at a distribution center, a store, right? Do not to lose that traceability, right, down, right? Because we're kind of going to the point David said, right? Like when our softwares and infrastructure was kind of not built for, all these decisions were taken when we couldn't have massive in-memory databases, we couldn't have, this. So we took these decisions to just make our architecture easy, right? For this, right? Technologies, as now your team works on it, has kind of moved very further up, right? So we need to just start working this up bottom up, right? On saying, like we're not losing that data, because it kind of goes to everything else we've talked today.
Absolutely. I think, like you well said, like, you have a set of trust issues, and you have a set of like a lot of complex number of actors that you have in the ecosystem, and technologies like blockchain, and blockchain being one of the technology. I think they can actually bridge the gap, right? And that's where I think both, like as a functional and a technology, can complement each other. Well said. On that note,
and real quick, Bob, I was smiling on the comment of losing the data because I think we've all experienced loss in visibility and information across the supply chain at some point in our career, and likely very recently in our careers. So what I would say is the more transparent and collaborative we can be, the more all the partners that are taking part in this journey, because we are a more interconnected world than we've ever been before, will benefit, because we'll be able to discern signal from noise, and therefore we'll be able to take action and spend our time in the areas that truly need our focus and our attention.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. And David, on that, and that again, on the note on the technology, like going back to that point of like digital transformation, can you comment on the role of like digital transformation in Walmart, particularly in like ensuring sustainability and reducing inefficiency, right? And the final dimension to that would be like how pervasive are some of the technologies that we are working on. Like, how do you see the future of that? How do they evolve?
I believe that driving change at the pace we're driving it, and the scale that we're driving it, starts with how an organization thinks about and manages change. And in my opinion, you must start by communicating very clearly the dissatisfaction with current state. Then you have to illustrate the vision of the future for the folks that you're interacting with. And then the first steps that you execute towards that change need to be seamless so that you can win people over. And if you get those three pieces right, you can overcome folks' resistance to change. As humans, that seems to be a trait that we all carry, is what I've found. So, at Walmart, we're doing this in numerous areas. And we have initiatives that focus on improving customer service levels, think same day and same day delivery, and the hardware and the software that we have to bring together to forward deploy the correct inventory in assets that can service customers in that way. We have initiatives that focus on labeling packages less. I'm always surprised at how many labels there are on boxes and how much waste that generates. We have, your and I's team are working on a new packaging algorithm and implementing new hardware to reduce the use of cardboard and void fill within packages that we're delivering to customers, as well as using technology that ensures that we're using packaging that is fully curbside recyclable. We have a last mile team under Tom Ward that is testing sustainable solutions with autonomous and electric vehicles and drones, which I believe will transform the transportation space, which drives a lot of our carbon emissions today. Really, the long-term goal for our automation technology is to be pervasive throughout the supply chain network where it makes sense, and to empower our associates to spend more time on complex tasks like managing managing a few robotic cells, rather than focusing on routine repetitive tasks. those are some of the areas that I would call out, Balu.
Fantastic. So, Samay, this is an interesting point from when I look at the question from you, right? Which is you internally going through a digital transformation, and it is a constant, quest like in everybody. But you're also helping a lot of enterprise go through that journey, right? What do you see things differently, right? And different enterprise, different scale of complexity, and do you have any insights that you would like to share?
No, I mean, Balu, I mean, firstly, there is no secret sauce, though. I mean, I would say I liked how David started with the change is the big part, right? Like going, through that, right? And I think for us, frankly, firstly, I won't know the different scale. We mostly work with, large scale enterprises, and that's where change is toughest. So I guess we we see that side of the horizon much more, right? I would just say, and I think I would add this, uh, David and I have chatted about this, though I'll add to, I think David takes this for granted, so I'll just add this to, sorry David, but I'll add it to what he said, right? It is that that change of really thinking customer back, right? This is, not all companies do that, right? Like this is something, really good in a strength at Walmart, right? And you guys do it, right? Which is, it's not about, doing innovation, putting robots, doing this in for that stage, right? It is really about how is that, what does it actually mean for the end customer, right? And then kind of do that in. And of course, that's so, I would just add that, as people are going through that change, really getting that clear view of the end customer, right? Of like to them, because people really can do it. Less people are motivated on doing this for cost savings, doing this because this, right? But when you can connect it to this, because at the end of the day, in this super connected world or integrated world, every person who's going through the change is also a consumer, right? So that circles back. So I would just firstly just add this, and I know that you and David do this, but this is also something which we've seen good companies which have kind of executed change faster than others have really kept that customer view at the center for them, right? So I would just add that. I think on other than that, I think it really comes to this whole in my view, that whole bit that we've talked about, treating it as a strategic objective, right, and integrating it, right, is kind of key. And I don't think, Balu, in today's world, though, right, it's not, it's COVID's really helped, right? Everybody kind of understand that. So I think we are, it's more, it has to happen. It's strategic, is more, prevalent. I think the key thing I would just add, which I think we've seen, good companies do, is that real integrated, thought process, right? Of saying, going about this and saying, we're not now trying to just solve one problem, another problem. We're trying to solve and make sure that we are essentially going at this in an integrated view is there, right? We personally, when we take companies through, right, just because of the nature of how GreyOrange works, right, our transformation around sustainability and all of that is much more around efficiency gained by having integrated software, right? In some sense, right? And and software is also such an abused word, right? Because everything is software and nothing software, right? But if you really think about it, there are so much efficiencies, but I'm sure you see it in your team, right? Is just to be gained by having decisions which are not local, optimized, and more globally optimized. And that's what we are seeing, huge changes which brands going through, right, just by getting to that integrated view of decision making done. And that's been our experience.
Yeah, I think as both of you quoted multiple times, right? It is at the end of the day, this is to fulfill the needs of a customer, right? And keeping our processes, our ecosystem partners, trusted, connected, and simple, and not just purely in terms of like sustainability, but also make sure that it is creating a value chain, right? It's just not trying to be like, it's not the old business where we are trying to be a lot more sustainable. Great thoughts. On that note, I would say, like, as Doug McMillan, the CEO of Walmart, said, that this pandemic has showed the world that supply chain is really a lifeline. And that's a very powerful statement, and I relate a lot to that statement actually. There was a tremendous amount of innovation and resiliency displayed by companies worldwide over the last 18 months. They quickly resorted to finding solutions. Supply chain trends and technologies are transforming the way business is conducted, and they will continue to evolve well into the future. Like building a resilient supply chain network today, meaning good visibility and the agility to shift sourcing, manufacturing, and distribution activities, and more importantly, rapidly. Companies need to anticipate risks, minimize exposure to shocks, build trust, and keep markets open in making their supply chains network resilient. Thank you, David and Samay, for sharing your valuable experiences with all of us. And to the audience, thank you, dear audience, for tuning in. Please do tweet your key takeaways from the session with the hashtag Converge Walmart. There are exciting prizes for a few lucky tweets. And thank you both.
Thank you, Balu.
Thank you, Balu. Thanks, David.